So we'll go ahead and start this presentation. Let me pull it up here. So thank you guys for joining. Oh, we have somebody getting on go-to there. We do have it available on the web or YouTube.
I'm sorry, is that the file that, what you emailed to yourself, or is it from the K drive?
From the K drive.
Okay. I made a little bit of edits too.
Yeah, I pulled it off the K drive. It should be the right one.
Okay, like 5 minutes ago, right?
Like 10 minutes ago?
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So this is our presentation. And so in past years, what we've had, I thought that was mine. We usually have this type of presentation. In the past, it has been called workshop. We did update it to presentation on the understanding that because it is presenting the budget to the public, that doesn't mean that it's not workshopable where you're not able to answer questions or provide feedback. And at the end of this, we'll go ahead and post this presentation onto our website, so it will be accessible. And then we'll also have this item before the council at the next meeting, which is scheduled for August 7th, which is our regularly scheduled council meeting. And then from there, council will have some discussion items and things to discuss as a group. And at that time, they could either adopt the budget, amend the budget, make changes, or continue the item to another meeting if they'd like to have additional options. Could you go ahead and go to the next page for me, please? So the council's objectives. So we're presenting this budget for 23-24 fiscal year, and the council has set, and we as staff have implemented a clear and consistent policy of fiscal conservativeness. That has been the way past councils have operated for many years here at the city of Escalon. Because we're a small city, hard times hit us hard. And so we've always, especially after the last recession, our council was very adamant about making sure that we are protecting the city in cases of change or downfall. So we've been maintaining a fiscally responsible approach to providing local services and to present the city budget in a straightforward and understandable manner. And so therefore, council and myself as the city manager have agreed to adhere to the following budget objectives in this year's budget. The first one is to deliver a balanced operating city budget using minimal reserves. The second one is to maintain the current level of service to the community. The third one is to incorporate this council manager goals. And the fourth one is to keep the city's budget process open and easily understood. So our role of the city council, as the elected legislative body, the council has overall responsibility in setting policy for the scope, direction, and financing of the city's services. And the council establishes local laws and policy that is administered and implemented through staff. The council is also responsible for establishing land use policies through the general plan and zoning regulations, which is upon recommendation by our planning commission. So under the council manager form of government, the council provides policy direction to the city manager, who's then responsible for administering city operations. In setting policy, the council works closely with either citizen advisory commissions and committees, and then considers staff information and recommendations, receives comments from interested parties and the general public when making their decisions. So here's a picture of our current council members. You may recognize some of them. There's one in the audience. So currently we have David Bellinger as mayor, Andrew Hagan or Andy Hagan as mayor pro tem, and then we have council members Jeremy Engel, Melinda Walker, and Sean Stroman. So last year's goals are actually very similar to this year's goals because we're still processing those. So the council and staff goals for 23-24 are basically a continuation of what we had implemented or were moving forward with in the last budget year, which is to continue to pursue senior housing development, continue our efforts for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, assess our recreation programs to meet the community's needs, explore areas of funding for the SSJID surface water connection, and increase efforts to address code enforcement requests. And those continue to be our direction at this point in time. And then regarding our fiscal policies, so in order to achieve the goals of the community, it's prudent for the city to have in place adopted fiscal policies to help guide the city administration and council through decision-making processes. So these policies are operational efficiencies, which are to implement internal operational efficiency, utilize contractors when the same or higher level service can be obtained at a lower cost, enter into joint operating arrangements with other agencies so as to provide services more cost effectively and efficiently. So some examples of that would be most recently having the city of Oakdale take over our animal control processes and shelter. That was most recent. We also are in a operating agreement with the city of Ripon for dispatch services for our police department. Voter-approved revenues, to utilize revenues derived from voter-approved measures to fund programs and serve important and services important to our community, and to establish the appropriate rates and assessments to best manage and operate the city's enterprise operations and capital maintenance needs. And then we talk about reserves. The council's goal is to have a 33% reserve, which is general fund operating, 33% of the general fund operating expenses in the reserve account by annually committing funds necessary to keep this objective. Some other fiscal policies that we have are on infrastructure, provide sufficient routine maintenance each year to avoid deferred maintenance backlog, employee development, attracting and retaining competent employees by providing professional work environments, safe working conditions, adequate training opportunities, and competitive salaries as finances may allow, and to base salary increases on individual merit and job performance levels. And then in economic development, aggressively pursue businesses that add to the city's economic base, particularly those that generate sales tax and tax increment revenue, and to promote a mix of businesses that contribute to a balanced community. New services include adding new services only when a need has been identified and a funding source developed, to allocate discretionary funds and grant programs with the greatest benefit to the community, and to require agreements for specific services and monitor effectiveness on an ongoing basis. Construction of new facilities, to plan for new facilities and amenities only if the construction and ongoing maintenance costs will not adversely impact our operating budget. And then fiscal management is to maximize our revenues by utilizing grants from other agencies to the fullest extent possible, and to charge fees for services that reflect the true cost of providing such services, and to review fee schedules on a regular basis, to fully account for the cost of the enterprise operation and to avoid any subsidy by the general fund, and to charge enterprise funds their fair share of cost of the city's support services. We also want to maintain accurate accounting records to keep the city manager and city council informed of the financial conditions of the city at all times, and file quarterly reports of investments that adhere to both state law and city policy, of which follow reasonable and prudent guidelines for investment of the city's idle cash. So what is a city's budget? The city budget is a planning document that details how the city will pay for a certain level of service over a specific period of time. In our case, and for our case many years, it's a yearly annual budget. It is developed by staff based on policy direction from the city council, reviewed by the public and city council, and eventually adopted by the city council. Staff then implements the city budget over the course of the fiscal year, which is effective every July 1st through June 30th. A municipal budget is generally a combination of narratives and spreadsheets, which utilizes terms like general fund, special revenue fund, enterprise fund, debt service fund, capital improvement program, reserves, expenditures, and revenues. So these are the fund types that you'll often see in a city budget. The general fund is used to account for money that is not legally required to be accounted for in another or specific fund. The city operates one general fund. Enterprise funds are used to account for self-supporting activities that provide services on a user charge basis. So our city operates 4 enterprise funds: water, sewer, stormwater, and public transit system. Special revenue funds are used to account for activities paid by taxes or other revenue sources in which the expenditure of those funds are restricted by city, state, or federal government. And then debt service funds are used to account for general long-term debt principal and interest. And the city operates 2 debt service funds for the payment of the Civic Center and Community Center renovations and citywide energy projects. So how does our budget process work? So the process of developing and adopting the city budget begins and ends with the city council. As elected representatives of the community, the council provides direction to staff through policy directives such as council manager goals that maintain the most effective and efficient balance between desired services and appropriate costs. The staff annually prepares a proposed budget to meet the council's policy directions and goals, and staff's proposed budget is then presented to the city council and the public at a public workshop for questions, dialogue, and input. Staff makes any revisions as directed by council and returns the proposed budget back to council for at least one last review and formal adoption at a council meeting, usually before July 1st. We are a little bit behind, but we're getting there, So this is the big picture, which is all of the funds. Ooh, we got a typo up here. So for fiscal year 23-24, the city is projecting $13,919,962 in revenues, with a total of $25,017,089 in expenditures. The resulting deficit includes both ongoing and one-time activity. So for the city, the one-time activities are primarily those related to capital improvement projects and other activity that spans more than the current 12-month budget. Approximately $14.1 million of the capital improvement plan budgets are one-time sewer, water, wastewater, and street improvement projects, not part of the operating funds. Additionally, about $603,900 are a combination of vehicle replacements that were not completed in the prior year, along with IT server upgrades identified by our IT services consultant. Also, there was a new request from the police department for replacement vehicle radio upgrades and handgun replacements for a little over $150,000. This year's proposed budget includes $537,326 unfunded accrual liability payment that the city is obligated to pay for retirement. General fund operating and capital expenditures is projected to be at $1.8 million. So regarding the city's capital improvements projects, otherwise known as our CIP, we have a listing of projects, and they're color-coded by department. And so we have the first one listed for parks, and then as we go down, there's several projects listed for streets in that orange color. And then we have a handful of projects for water, and then a lot of projects for sewer. And then we have that one project for storm. As many residents may know, the city has made water and sewer projects a priority. We have very old systems that need replacement, things that need to be updated and replaced, and those are our 2 areas that have the largest impact if there were to be something that broke or had an issue. And so we're definitely been moving forward, and past councils have been very supportive on moving those projects forward to make sure we're addressing all of our infrastructure needs. So here are the citywide revenues. The majority of these increases or decreases are a result of one-time payments for services and/or grant claim reimbursements. The city did receive full ARPA payment of $1.8 million, and about $1 million of it is currently in deferred revenue. We also have Measure K grants of approximately $450,000 expected for First Street, which was one of the projects that were listed on the CIP, and then approximately $500,000 in transit claim requests through federal and local agencies. And then here is a revenue fund descriptions and purpose. And so this basically gives you the name and definition or description of what each of these revenue funds are for and what they can be used on. Go ahead. So our general fund revenue projections, as is Escalon's practice, the revenue projections in this budget are conservative. For cities, revenue is money received from taxes, fees, charges, assessments, intergovernmental revenue, investment earnings, property sale revenue, and monies collected from licenses, permits, fines, and penalties. The city's two largest sources of revenue are property tax and sales tax, which is comprised of 75%, a little over 75% of the general fund revenues. In fiscal year 2023 to 24, projections for sales tax revenue include a decrease of approximately a little over 19%, and property tax revenues an increase of 5.26% from the fiscal year 22-23, estimated to date. The total general fund revenue shows a decrease of approximately $277,000, or 5.62% from the prior fiscal year. So I don't know at what point you wanted to go into things.
Oh, we're good. Yeah, I was just waiting for it. Yeah, so in this next slide right here, it just shows you a calculation as to how I came with that 75%. So if you look at the table here, property tax shows an amount of a little bit over $2.3 million. Along with that, there's a sales tax for $1.1 million for a combination of $3.5 million. So I took that amount and divided out by the total general fund revenue to come up with that 75% threshold.
And then is there any questions thus far on anything? So the First Street projects actually, we were awarded Measure K monies, approximately $500,000 for a project. It was actually moving forward back in 2009, I believe, and it just wasn't getting any interest from the community or the business owners. It was to rehabilitate First Street from right here at McHenry Avenue down to the 120. At that point, there were just several concerns that had come up over the past, but since then, what we've done, because we still have that money for that project, was combined it with our Main Street bike and pedestrian project that we have moving forward, and are basically moving both of those forward as a downtown modernization project where we would take care of First Street, redo the road, fix any curb gutter sidewalk concerns, and then also attach that to our Main Street project, which is bike and pedestrian improvements from Main Street from, I believe it's First Street all the way down to St. John, curb gutter sidewalk, bike lanes. Its purpose is to connect the community all together so that people who are walking, riding bikes, have them be outdoors more, less vehicles, more walker-friendly pedestrian facilities. The existing parking along the park will be the same, but we are going to be adding a actual sidewalk down the lawn so that you can walk on sidewalk as opposed to grass. It is, yes. So we have a number of events during the summer, and we didn't want to try to get intermingled with those. And so we're looking at October as when we would start that project, when the car show and park feed and all these other activities are done, and we should be able to have it completed before Christmas on Main. So.
Oh, no, not yet.
Any other questions? No, no problem.
So for the revenues for fiscal year's estimated 22-23 balance, you see $5.5 million there, but for my calculation, I took out the deferred revenue of about $632,000. We have it sitting in deferred revenue, so whenever there's expenditures against the COVID funds, I'll do an entry to record the actual expenses. So you would see an increase in revenues, but then also on the liability side, in the deferred revenue, there's a decrease to it, so it doesn't affect the cash balance. So I had to factor that number in order to come in with the projected change from the prior year, which is that 5.68, that negative 5.61% decrease, which is $277,000 right there. So,
Go ahead.
general funds are used to pay for community services such as police services, community development, street maintenance and landscaping, animal control, weed abatement, park maintenance, community center, recreation. And there's other services that are primarily or partially funded through general fund, which includes personnel, finance, city management, city council facilities, maintenance, and the library. So for the general fund expenditure summary, total expenditures are projected to have an increase of approximately 12.32% compared to the prior year. This is a result of a combination of vehicle replacement and other equipment replacements, along with increase in insurance costs and inflation. The list below are attributed to the increases. The first one is that $35,000 one-time cost for painting and server replacement upgrades at City Hall. There's $65,000 for a one-time cost for AC and ice machine replacement needed at the community center. There's $40,000 one-time payment computer replacement and server upgrade at the courtyard. There's $69,000 increase in insurance costs. So in the past fiscal year, there were additional increases in work comp claims, so that drives up the insurance cost there. There's also $218,000 for one-time cost for PD handgun replacement, handheld radio, PD vehicle, and computer replacement. In addition to that, there's $120,000 one-time cost for the housing element update for senior housing.
No, for citywide housing.
Citywide
So
housing.
that's our housing element, which is a requirement from the state of California to be updated every 4 to 8 years. We were on the 4-year track, so we will be updating that this year. And then as long as state laws don't continue to change, it would be another 8 years until then. But I'm pretty sure it probably will change by then.
Yeah. Lastly, there's that $19,900 in computer replacement that's needed for City Hall staff and the firewall update. The chart below, or that table below, shows what fiscal year 22-23 was budgeted at, and the actual or estimated to date for fiscal year 22-23 is looking at about $5.1 million. So next year, you're seeing that proposed increase of about $5.8 million as a result of the item that's described in this slide here. So I did a table to show you kind of what it looks like when you look at the general fund expenditures by the different departments that's currently in the general fund. So animal control makes up about 3% of general fund, building is 3%, civic center, City Hall, there's nothing there. Community center is 2%, engineering or courtyard is a 0.25%. Engineering is 4%. There's the transfers in and out. This is to fund the debt service payment. Library costs, it's about 1%. Management support staff. This right here, it'll zero out at the end of the year. This is usually allocated with the general cost and cost center. You have PD at 56%, recreation at 4%, street lighting at 1%, and streets at 6%. So it gives you an overall summary as to what general fund department and expenditures look like in summary. And here's a glimpse of what our organization chart looks like currently for fiscal year 23-24. We have a position for a city manager, contract city attorney, and then there's the Development Community Services Manager, Public Works Superintendent, Administrative Assistant, Chief of Police, and the Finance Director. And below that, you'll see the different positions that's laid out for each of the departments. In the next slide, I know it's a little bit small, but I just wanted to show you how the positions are allocated. These are positions that they focus on different areas within general government. So kind of like, for instance, you have an accountant, but the salary is allocated into management support, but then there's sewer costs associated with it too, and water. So when you think of this, it's kind of like it's a person that would spend time doing payroll costs, accounts payable, that has to be spread out to the different areas. So this year, we're sticking with the same numbers for position allocation. I know last year was budgeted at 3.85, so the numbers, we're just staying status quo. So for this year is about 31.85. Below are the listed part-time employees. We have 2 community center hostess, 5 recreation assistants, 11 reserve officers, and the chart below that's just contracted employees. As indicated earlier, city attorney, city engineer, consultants, those are on as needed, building inspector, a wastewater treatment plant operator, and then there's information technology through Mid-Valley. And then below that, you have city council member and commission members. There's 5 council member and other commission members related to planning. And then you also have volunteer reserves and explorers that equates to about 20. So before I dive down into the different department and the expenditures, I just wanted to provide kind of like a table of what the categories are, so it gives you a better understanding as to what they're associated with. So when it comes to personnel costs, these include base wages, overtime costs, various incentives related to certification, educational, post-incentive, bilingual, health insurance, life insurance, uniforms, retirement, unemployment insurance, Social Security, and Medicare costs. For supplies and other service in this categories, it can include items such as contractual costs for routine services, their maintenance costs for landscaping, dispatch, surveillance, attorney costs, information technology, and animal control that's contracted to City of Oakdale. There's also office supply, telephone, internet utility, printer computer leases, and many more. In terms of costs associated with general gov center costs, these are costs that's allocated to various departments for general government and management support. Some of the support and management includes costs related to city council, city attorney, auditor's costs, city clerk, city manager, public works, and insurance costs. When the expenses are incurred, they are originally expensed to management and support, and at the end of the year, each quarter, they're allocated to various departments according to the operational cost that's at the end of each quarter for each department. For contributions to other agencies, these are costs that are allocated to various departments for, I gotta scratch that. That was in there an error. These are administrative fees related to property tax. That's what it is. There's a typo in there where I think I've probably copied the same information to the table below, but when it comes to contributions to other agencies, these are the admin fees associated with the property tax that we pay out to SJGOG. There's also number 5, which is capital improvement and construction improvement. Yeah, see, I think that went up right there. There's the transfers in and out. This is related to SLESIF and debt service that's currently sitting in a general fund or being in a SLESIF fund. It hits Fund 252 for SLESIF fund, but a part of that grant money gets allocated to the general fund to support officer salaries and benefits. And then when it comes to debt service, it's in a different fund, but we use money from the general fund to pay for Civic Center and City Hall. So that's what it is. And then there's also the loan charges too as well.
Any questions at this time?
So this is general fund expense by department. So if we're looking at the first department in the general fund, we have animal control here. There's no personnel services costs associated with it this year because we've contracted out animal control to City of Oakdale. So the only associated costs you have is related to contractual services, and there's some utility expenses that are incurred to related to animal control building. In the next sections for general fund, you have building. There's not that much change there, so for fiscal year 23-24, we're proposing, there's actually, since we've now filled in the position for a development community service manager, you see there's a change in personnel services cost there. So in last fiscal year, it was budgeted at $77,000, so this year you're looking at about $102,000. For supplies and services, it's remained about the same with a little bit of increase to account for a little bit of inflation and other cost needs. So in this area, you see about $74,000 here. So building, you're looking at a total operational cost of $218,000. For the civic center, this cost right here gets allocated to other department too as well. So for supplies and services, you'll see $59,000. That's budgeted right there, and it was identified that paints needed to repaint the Civic Hall, City Hall Center. Civic PD, the cost here remains about the same, so you'll see that it has a net zero balance. It's because at the end of the year, we do a transfer and move this over to PD as part of the general government center and cost center costs. Code enforcement, it's about just $6,000 proposed for fiscal year 23-24. Community center, we're proposing $147,000. If you look at the supplies and service lines, we're requesting $102,000. Public Works Superintendent's requesting a replacement of the AC unit for about $65,000. In addition to that, there's that $15,000 ice machine that needs to be replaced at the community center. So for Courtyard, we're proposing $44,000 in expenditures. The capital equipment for that area is for $40,000 P2P replacement. That's identified by our IT consultant. So the next department you have right there is engineering. So there's an increased cost again there. So we're proposing $242,747 there. So these are in the transfer ins and out. This is related to the debt service for Civic Center and Community City Hall. And so the next fund in the general fund is the insurance cost. So there's an increase from the prior year where you see it going up from $165,000 to $202,000. As I indicated earlier, it's related to work comp insurance costs increasing due to claims. The next department is the legislative. This is part of the cost that's allocated at the end of the year to other departments, so you'll see it at a zero balance too as well. For library, we're proposing $62,802. For management and support, we're proposing a total of $19,900. Some of the costs are allocated at the end of the year to fund other departments too as well. So for parks, you have $186,376. Personnel services, supplies, and all other expenditures remain about the same. For planning, we're proposing $365,520 for that. A large portion of it, it's related to the $120,000 for
Our housing element
the housing
update.
element, yes, thank you. And then, so for the police department, we're proposing $3.3 million. Personnel services remains about the same. Supplies and equipment, or there's more expenditures requested this year, and it's due to the vehicle request made by PD for $95,000. In addition to that, there's the handheld radio that needs to be replaced due to encryptions. And we're also paying for the flock contracts for the cameras, the 5 cameras that's allocated, I believe, at the 5-point center main sections in the city of Escalon. So for recreation, we're proposing $270,000. It's a little bit of a decrease from the prior year. I know last year we had more staff that assisted in this area. Along with that, we had a staff member that also retired out too. So that's why you see there's a little bit of a decrease in that area. For streets landscape, proposing $36,000. So there's a small increase right there from the prior year. Street lighting, $115,000. And then streets total, it's $392,000. So the grand total for general fund costs right there, it's $5.8 million. So for the general fund summary for this fiscal year, 23-24 proposed fiscal year budget, we're estimating the reserve balance to be at $2.2 million. So at the beginning of January 1st, 2023, the estimated reserve balance is about $4.5 million. The operating revenues is about $4.6 million. Operating expenditures is $5.3 million with a deficit of $693,000. Part of it's related to transfers in and out for SLESA funds, public service credits. There's one-time reserve expenditures as identified in the slides earlier for equipment replacements and other costs. And there's the debt service payment for Civic Center and Community Center. And I just added a little note right there where it indicates kind of like we received the remainder of our ARPA funds of $900,000. So I know in the last year, 1.4 million of the general reserve was allocated to sewer for the wastewater treatment plant prior to the full funds being received, so that resulting in a status quo GF general fund balance despite increase in general fund expenditures projected for fiscal year 23-24. So it looks like we're still maintaining over that 33% minimum reserve balance. So in the next slides, it's related to the development impact fee for AB 1600. So for park deferred impact fees, we're proposing an $89,000 request. The machine equipment replacement, it's related to the camera and server replacement that's needed at the parks facility. The transportation mitigation fees, we're just budgeting that $20,000 and just carrying that forward. It looks like last year nothing was spent, but then just carrying it forward to this fiscal year. And then, so overall the development impact fees it's for a total of $109,000 in expenditures in that area.
And just to give everybody a little update on development impact fees, those are fees that are typically charged to new development. So any new housing or new buildings, commercial, industrial, they pay development impact fees upon issuance of their building permit or constructing. We also charge a certain level of development impact fees if they increase the size of their building a certain amount, or if they change their classification of use. And so if they're currently a house and they're able to, and this is just an example, convert it over to commercial space, then they would pay an impact fee for the size of their building to convert it to that commercial use. Obviously we don't collect a lot in development impact fees because we don't have a lot of development in town, but there are certain processes that do occur in town with infill development where we do charge those impact fees at those times.
So in the next section we have, it's related to lighting and landscape maintenance district expenditures. So for Sunrise, we're proposing an $11,000 and $11,000 budget. It's a slight increase due to rise in utility costs, water costs. And then for Bellaterra, we're proposing $63,000. So there's a little bit of an increase due to utility services increasing too as well. So for Westwood, we're proposing $41,000. I believe last year, the amount that was budgeted didn't account for landscape contract services. So as you can see, the actual expenditures in that area was for about $16,000. So I wanted to reflect more of an actual cost. So that's why you see a bigger number there this year. For LMDD Estates, budgeting a little bit under $17,000 right there. And then for the BAD, it's for about $2,500 right there.
And then those items are also on the council agenda for tonight. They're each having their public hearing to go over those engineering reports for the year.
So in the next section, it's related to Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Funds, or known as SLESIV. We're proposing $148,500 in expenditures here. That $80,500 is transferred out to support police officers. That's currently in the general fund. In addition to that, we have $68,000 for expenditures. This is for the 2 vehicles that we've received last year where vinyl wrapping hasn't occurred yet, so we're just carrying it over to this fiscal year. So Measure K, these are mostly for construction improvement process related to street, local roads, transportation improvements. So for this year, we're proposing $5.2 million in expenditures. This is a result of Project 188 for South McHenry Avenue to Jones. Our engineers estimating cost of $2.3 million there. We have Project 231 for Vintage Estates. Our engineers are estimating $416,000 there. The next project is project number 234 Main Street for bikes and pedestrian improvement for about $1.2 million there. And we have the First Street Improvement Project, which is budgeted or expected to be at $1.3 million. In the next section, it's related to gas tax and SB1 expenditures. So for this year, we're proposing $2,750. It's for project 230 for slurry crack seal, estimating it at to be $325,000. Those were fiscal year 21-22 funds that weren't utilized, so it's carrying forward. We also have project 253, which is for the funds received in 22-23 for slurry crack seal as well for the same amount. There's project 233 McHenry Avenue Sidewalk Rehab for $14,000. And then this year, there's a new project number 254 for Yosemite Sidewalk Replacement in the amount of $37,000 there. So in this next section here, it's related to the community center debt service expenditures. So every year we pay out about $160,000 for the civic center, for the community center, civic center and community center, and then we also have the energy debt lease service payment that we have to pay for that's for about $145,000 annually. So in the next section, it's about enterprise funds. So what are enterprise funds? Enterprise funds are used to account for self-supporting activities that provide services on a user charge basis. These are the type of services that are sometimes offered by private companies or districts. The city operates the following 4 enterprise funds. You have water, sewer, stormwater, and public transit. So for fiscal year 23-24, the projected water fund balance, I just wanted to go over that a little bit more too. So this year, we're estimating the fund balance to be at $4.7 million. Some of the projects in here, I think I'll talk about it in the next slide, but so the city has recently received a state revolving fund loan for the construction of Well 1A and a rate study that was completed in fiscal year 1920. Monies collected from City of Tracy continues to be set aside for future connection to South San Joaquin Water Treatment Plant. So currently, the money received for the sale of water to City of Tracy, it's sitting at about a little bit over $1 million there. So for water operating, we're estimating the fund balance to be at $1.8 million. Water capital is $1.7 million. Water depreciation, about a little bit over $4,000. And then you have the debt service fund balance that's a little bit over $500,000 for the state revolving fund for the 2018 loan and the 1984 loan. So I wanted just to dive a little bit deeper into the water expenditures. So for fiscal year 23-24, we're proposing $1.2 million for water operating. And then overall, the total expenditures related to water expenditures is about $4.7 million. You have the various projects that are going to be occurring in the next upcoming fiscal year. So we have project 249. It's for the generator upgrade at well site for $162,000. And there's a new project this upcoming fiscal year, project number 255 for water valve replacement in the amount of $132,000. We have project 204 for well 1A construction, that's estimating at $2.5 million. Project 238, well abandonment number 6, we're proposing $30,500 there. Project 231 for vintage estates for $537,000 there. And then there's a new project this year in the water fund for project number 256 for St. Clair Street water line replacement for a little bit over $71,000 there. So in the next section, it's related to sewer. Based on the current sewer rate study from 2016, the last sewer rate increase was in August of 2019. A new rate study of the city sewer system will be required as the city moves forward with the wastewater treatment plant. Both wastewater treatment design and future rate study costs are appropriated to ARPA funds. So part of the wastewater treatment plants are being funded by ARPA funds. So you have phase 1 of the sewer line, trunk line rehab that was completed, that has already been completed. So this year we're proposing phase 2, and then in the next upcoming years we're proposing phase 3 for a scheduled start around that time frame. The engineering and design work for improvement at the wastewater treatment plant have been underway for several months, almost at 90% design. So when it comes to the sewer industrial fund balance, you're looking at an ending fund balance of an estimated $822,186. I put some notes below there where I'm recommending that we do hold funds for debt service payment, because I know that when it comes to capital improvement costs, the cost associated with it continues to rise, and I just want to make sure that we have enough funds to cover for debt service expenditures. So when it comes to sewer industrial projects for fiscal year 23-24, you have about a couple projects there, which is the wastewater treatment plant, and then there's project 244 for industrial pond sludge removal that hasn't been completed in the prior year, so it's just a carry forward of balance from the previous year. And then also in addition to that, Public Works is requesting a $65,000 fund to replace the aerators at the sewer facility. So This right here just goes into a little bit more of a detail versus just seeing it more summarized in the earlier slides. It's just going over line by line regarding kind of like what cost is associated with the sewer industrial funds. You have personnel services, which there's a slight increase due to MOU, salary increases, insurance cost increases, PERS liability increases as well. So at the end of fiscal year 23-24, we're proposing about $2.1 million right there in increases. So in the next slide, this is for the sewer municipal fund balance. The projected fund balance for fiscal year 23-24 is projected to be at a little bit over $2.1 million. Again, due to the increase in capital improvement costs, I would want to recommend saving some money for the debt service payment. I would like to set aside 3 times the amount that's due every single year to ensure that we have enough funds to cover debt service payments. Some of the expenditures related to the sewer municipal costs are for the various projects. One of them happens to be, again, wastewater treatment plant. There's a 50-50% split between industrial and sewer. That's why you see it again right here. There's Project 214 McHenry Trunk Line Rehab Phase 2. Project 248 for the SCADA server upgrade for $10,000. And then there's the project number 250 for McHenry controllers for $10,000. Project 242, it's for the Carrigan lift station. Engineers are estimating it to be at a little bit over $700,000 there. And then Public Works is requesting equipment replacement in the amount of $47,000 for the Aquajet. So this just breaks it down in more further details versus summarize, as in the slides earlier, that goes over costs associated with the sewer municipal expenditures. The total sewer municipal expenditures for fiscal year 23-24, we're proposing $5.7 million. A lot of the increases are a result of the projects that I mentioned earlier in the other slide. In the next slide, it's related to the storm fund balance. So storm operating costs are currently exceeding the revenues, and the process to raise these rates would require a vote of the residents and are handled differently than water and sewer rates. We continue to incur costs due to MS4 permitting requirements by the state of California. So this year, the storm estimated fund balance at the end of the year, fiscal year 23-24, you're looking at a little bit over $350,000 there. So if you look at the storm water operating line, you can see that there's a transfer that's done between capital to operational costs because the operational cost is exceeding what we're getting in revenues. So that's why we're hoping to get that vote or get it on the ballot to propose for an increase. So on the next slide, it just goes over storm expenditures more in details. Storm water operating, we're proposing $227,000, $398. Storm capital, it's at $30,500, and this is for the telemetry update at SSJID facility. So for a grand total of a little bit over $300,000 there. And then the last enterprise fund, it's related to the public transit. So transit is funded by pass-through revenue. The level of transit services is directly related to revenue we receive. A private provider through a contract, we are currently using MTM Transit for contractual services related to the transit area for transportation needs and things like that. So in regards to the fund balance for transit, you're looking at an estimated balance of a little bit over $3,000 there. So in the next slide, it just goes over in details regarding the expenditures. So personnel services remains, there's a slight $4,000 increase there. supplies and services, we've contracted out services with MTM, so it's increased there. And then we have capital cost expenditures. It's related to MDTC upgrades, and then there's the Mio car that Transit, John Ando is requesting to. So on this slide here, it gives you an overall overview of what the fund balance are estimated to be at projected fiscal year 23-24. So in the general revenue fund, it's about $3.3 million. If you look at the ending balance, it's about $14.2 million, which is about the same compared to the prior year. There wasn't that much change if you compared it to the prior year. And do you want to talk about that negative measure A?
So for the Measure K item, which is that item that's highlighted in green, that's a series of different funds that we receive from SJCOG. We currently have some projects that we're still trying to work out on those, and so we have that highlighted as a negative balance just to clearly define it better over the next few weeks. But those ones would include that First Street project as well as that Main Street Bike and Pedestrian Improvements project. The Main Street Bike and Pedestrian project is fully funded through a grant through the Active Transportation Program. And so the other Measure K fundings, we're just currently trying to confirm what they're at and which projects they go through. So that's the negative fund balance there that we'll be sorting out in the next few weeks. Then are there any questions? So in the past, we've had council direction to move forward on some serious code enforcement issues that needed to be addressed. And so when we move forward on those items, they incurred attorney costs in order to get those code enforcement issues resolved. And so at that year, we had a significant increase in costs associated with code enforcement specific to those projects that were authorized by council to move forward on. So we're not anticipating those to come back because they were cleared and resolved at this point in time. We do not. We do not have a code enforcement officer. The last time we had one, I believe, was in year 2009, 2010. That position was basically cut back at that year during the recession times. We are hopefully looking forward towards trying to do something maybe at a part-time basis. We just haven't gotten that far yet. So currently, development services, along with support from either the Public Works Department or the Police Department, assist us in code enforcement. And it is on a complaint basis. Correct, or if it's a public health and safety issue. Yeah. Is a code violation? Oh, the form online. Then they get on it pretty public works. A lot of weed abatement. It's mostly weed abatement, which is a process, and so that's why it usually takes a while for those to get resolved. But we do have the form available online through our website where you could submit a complaint through our website. And then we also have paper forms that are available at the counter if you wanted to take them with you and fill them out.
Oh, no. Yeah.
There's not really any expenditures. I didn't see that.
Depreciation capital.
I'm on 39.
Yeah, that's where we're looking. No, we are moving forward with that. They might not have hit the funds yet. We're still in process of closing out the year, and I know a lot of our charges have been in these last few months. So they might not be hitting that yet, but we can definitely look into that.
Are you referring to?
Surface water project.
Okay. Is that the one that we get billed from SSG?
Ardura as well, because they're the ones that are working on it for us. No, it is not on the agenda for tonight. It is scheduled for the council meeting on August 7th. And so we're doing another presentation at 6 p.m., and then we have it scheduled for the next council meeting after that, which is August 7th. Correct. We did bring an item to council at their request, putting a stay, so we're currently operating on the 22-23 like a budget stay until we move this forward.
At work. Where does the funds come from?
That comes from the general fund, but when it comes to negotiation, that's a meeting that's conducted in private with city council members. They need to have a discussion, but when it comes to funding, it comes from the general fund.
Other questions? Okay, well, if anything ever comes up, we always encourage members of the public, especially if they have questions related to the budget, to contact City Hall. So Peep and I are both available to sit down with people or schedule meetings to meet with them and go over any questions or concerns they may have. So we do want to put that out there, that we are available to discuss certain items or provide any clarifications. And if enough clarifications or questions are asked on certain areas, we'll make sure to cover those areas when presenting this item to council, to make sure that those are brought to their attention and then explained how it was resolved. It is a lot to digest, yes. All right, and then this PowerPoint will be posted onto our website. Typically where the agendas are found, we'll just put it right under there under agendas. So it'll be accessible to review. Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Turn the mic off. I need to revise this since